Okay, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Today's webinar is Establishing and Implementing a Sustainable National Forest Monitoring System, Effects on the Forest Sector of a Country. You're very welcome, and thank you all for joining us. As you know, today's webinar is part of the live online course, Forests and Transparency under the Paris Agreement. In this webinar, we are going to be talking about national forest monitoring systems and the process to establish one and its effects and uses that this can have for our country. Today, we have 4 presentations, followed by a 15-minute question and answer session where we want to hear from you. You already know me from the course, I think, from Module 3, but my name is Emily Donegan and I work for the National Forest Monitoring Team at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. It's really nice to see you here with us today, and without further ado, I'd like to also introduce you now to our first speaker, David Morales. David is a forestry officer at FAO, expert of national forest monitoring, being the lead author of the voluntary guidelines on national forest monitoring systems, which you have been studying during this course. He has a PhD in forest inventory and remote sensing from the University of Göttingen and a master's in business administration from the Technological Institute of Costa Rica, and has over 30 years of experience on forest monitoring. So thanks a lot for being here with us today, David. Over to you.
Thank you, Emily. Oops, wait a moment. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are, or even good night if you are checking this web seminar later. I am glad to be here today with you. In this presentation, I will talk about FAO voluntary guidance on national forest monitoring. I hope my talk will complement the information you had learned during the online module. You know, to talk about the guidance, I think first we have to talk about the role of national forest monitoring system. Normally, a national forest monitoring system is related with data and information on forest resources of a country, where this information is used by policy and decision makers. More recently, it is taking more relevance in the context of international and national reporting, for example, on the Global Forest Assessment of the FAO, the UNFCCC, CBD, Sustainable Development Goals, and among others, reporting process. However, a national forest monitoring system is more than that. Some other uses that I can mention can be, but not only, no. Impact assessment of natural hazards like hurricanes, earthquakes, landslides, droughts, wildlife, wildfires, etc. Sustainable development planning, like for example, you want to build a road, you want to build a city, land use management, watershed management, etc. Wildfires monitoring and control overall now or currently with the last big wildfires, for example, in USA, Australia, and the Amazonian. And some other issues that, for example, people don't like taxation. But of course, for bad of good, the information provided as well can be used for taxes purposes or exoneration. And there are other uses as well that we can see later. When we talk about national forest monitoring systems, sometimes come the question, you know, a tricky question that is, what is required and expected at national and international level for a national forest monitoring system? Of course, normally, people think that when we promote a national forest monitoring system, we should focus on reliable and transparent data and information. Of course, at the end is what is expected. However, in order to be able to have this, we should expect from a national forest monitoring system to have in place Country ownership, countries need to be able to deal with all the process and not depend on external parties to carry out it. Have to have a legal and policy framework. For sure, it is really important. We need to have well-defined what we want to have and how it can be implemented. Today, it's almost impossible to talk about forests without taking consideration a landscape view. With a multiple purpose approach, we need to have, our national forest monitoring that keep this landscape view, and as well to have a multi-purpose approach. We need to have, and somehow assess all the interrelations among forests and other land uses. We cannot assess forests without assess them. Today, topics such as trees outside the forest, trees in urban areas, forest fragmentation, agroforestry systems, landscape restoration, etc., are taking more and more relevance, and we need to take care of them. In order to be sustainable in the long term, it needs to be institutionalized and have the human and financial resources available to be implemented. Forest monitoring have to have a flexible approach because it is an evolving process, and need to have clear collaboration with research, infrastructure, and capacity building. Be inclusive with a participatory discussion process and have collaboration and exchange with an international level. Be integrated and consistent with other sources of information and be flexible, including cost efficient. Have a well-defined data and information sharing policy and promote the credibility through transparency and quality. As you can see, these are the 14 principles promoted in the voluntary guidance on national forest monitoring of FAO. Those principles were highly discussed during different expert consultations, during as well the all FAO forestry commissions. And the aim of these principles is to ensure to have reliable, transparent data and information in a sustainable long term. Those principles are the basis for the different elements and best practices suggested in the voluntary guidance on national forest monitoring. Let me talk as well a little bit about the experience of FAO dealing with forest monitoring. FAO has a long history related with forest monitoring. One of the first milestone that we can mention is in 1971, was a publication of the book of Bertrand Hosky, Planning a Forest Inventory. And since then, there have been several additional contributions that had provided complementarities and updates of this publication, as you can see in this graphic. But in 1970, we can as well mention that there was a second milestone in a national forest monitoring process with the publication of the voluntary guidance of national forest monitoring, where now FAO provides the guidance to set up and implement a national forest monitoring system. It's not only the data collection, but it's as well all this concept that we are trying to introduce. The voluntary guidance on national forest monitoring were requested by member countries in September 2012 and endorsed by COFO in 2016. It is free available in 6 different languages. And the aim of this voluntary guidance on national forest monitoring is to assist member countries setting up and implementing a national forest monitoring system. The voluntary guidance aims to be a technical reference for government bodies in charge of forest monitoring, educational and research institutions, the public and private sector, members of a civil society concerned with forests. In the FAO guidance, a national forest monitoring system is defined as a system that comprises the people, institutions, and the resources that implement national forest monitoring at a country level in collaboration with other stakeholders, led by a governing body responsible for its conceptualization, planning, and execution, within a clear and well-defined mandate based on the principles and elements introduced in the voluntary guidance. Then I stop here and give the floor to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks so much for also reinforcing what is required by national forest monitoring at both national and international levels. Everyone who's listening, please remember to start putting questions that you have for David or any of our speakers into the Q&A box. Again, it would help us if you write their name at the start of your question. I think the next presenter is again you, David. But before you continue, I would like to do a quick poll with 3 questions, which I think should be appearing on your screen any moment. So hopefully everyone can see the poll on screen. Our first question is, has your country established a national forest monitoring system? And the answers range from yes, no, or you don't know. So please vote in this question. Then the second question is, what is the main purpose of the data produced by the National Forest Monitoring System in your country? Perhaps it's to develop, it's not possible to see the poll. I see one person has written in the chat. I can personally see it. I don't know if anyone else can see it.
I can see it.
You can see as well, David?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks for confirming. Hopefully it will appear eventually on the screen of those that can't see it immediately. It should be just a matter of time. So the second question is, what's the main purpose of the data produced by the National Forest Monitoring System in your country? Maybe it's to develop forest management policies, maybe it's to contribute to research, maybe it's for monitoring national activities in relation to climate change, maybe it's to comply with reporting requirements under international processes, or maybe it's to monitor forest relevant national policy objectives, or maybe you just don't know, and that's fine too. And the third question is, please indicate the main challenges encountered by the National Forest Monitoring in your National Forest Monitoring System in your country. You can just indicate maybe whether it's perhaps data quality, lack of institutional capacity, maybe lack of financial resources, technical challenges, all of the above, or maybe again, you don't know. Just to give us a general idea. Thanks. I've seen a lot of you have already responded. That's great. Just going to wait a couple more seconds, perhaps, until more people have voted. Maybe I can do a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have 53% having voted. Should we end polling there? I think so. Okay, so I hope you can see the results on your screen right now. Can you? Can everyone see the results? Just let me know.
Yes.
Thanks, Rusty. Thanks, everyone. Good to have some confirmation. So the answer to the first question, 50%, over 50% of you have responded saying that your country has established a national forest monitoring system. So that's very interesting. And for the second question, almost 50% of people said that their national forest monitoring system was intended to develop and adapt national and subnational forest policies and programs on forest management and planning. And finally, for the third question, the majority of people indicate that the main challenge encountered by the national forest monitoring system in their country is lack of financial resources. I think that's very telling. And if anyone wants to comment on those results, please pop your thoughts in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing the results now. And then I think we move back to David, if that's right, for the second half of your presentation.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. Over to you, David.
Okay. Okay, in this second talk, I would like to refer to the principles and elements included in the guidance. Wait a moment. Yes. You know, in the previous talk, I already introduced, you know, the principles, you know, in a kind of context, saying that what is expected and needed for a national forest monitoring system, and then coming into the conclusion of the 14 principles. Normally, people ask me, why 14? Why not 10, like the 10 commanders, or the 7, like the 7, you know, or more, you know? Well, as I mentioned before, we had a long discussion during the preparation of this voluntary guidance. It took us around 2 years and a lot of technical and expert consultations with academia, coordinators of national forest inventories around the world, politicians, etc. It is not easy. Of course, it was really important to have all well defined these principles. You know, at the end, we became with these 14 principles that we had grouped in 5 different categories, just in order to group them in somehow. You know, we added it as governance principles, scope principles, design, data, and overall. That means that have different contexts. Each principle is related with different specific elements in the guidance, and they are the basis or the foundation, I can say, for the definition of the guidance. Without having clear the principles, it was not possible to define the technical guidance and good practices. You know, you have first to have this framework in order to come to the guidance and the good practices. The principles provide us the framework for the guidance, as I already mentioned. The elements that contain the different guidance are grouped in different pillars. We have 3 different pillars that are interrelated but do not have a hierarchical order. This is important to keep in mind, that you know that these elements are not, you know, you don't have to follow, you know, this is the first, this is the second, this is the third. You know, this have to be a framework, but there is not a specific order, which is first, what is second, which is third. You know, we don't thought this design in this conceptualization. You can start with, for example, all the operational things, and then come to the, you know, more logistical issues, or come to the foundation elements later, or vice versa. The 3 groups of elements are the foundation elements that provide us the strategical and political guidance. Here we can find good practices on institutionalization, developing national capacity and partnerships, strengthening research and research institutions. The second pillar, the strategic elements that refer to management and organization of a national forest monitoring. Here we include the definition of the mandate, identification of information needs, stakeholder engagement, communication and dissemination, data management and archiving, impact assessment. The third column, or the third pillar, is the operational elements that include the guidance for the preparation of data collection and management, the statistical and operational design, data management, analysis, documentation, and reporting. As you can see in the figure, in this figure, a national forest monitoring system is quite complex, and it's not only dealing with data collection and analysis. The guidance summarizes good practice compiled from experts in different specialties, such legal, IT, forest and land use, business administration, journalists, remote sensing, sociologists, gender experts, economists, among others, and the long history of FAO and other partners that support member countries in this field. This is why the guidance are an excellent reference to setting up and implement a national forest monitoring system. Okay, the guidance are a compilation of good practices, as I already mentioned, and provide the user with some suggestion and advice. They are not compulsory, and each country is free to use it or not. We are, the countries have to decide if they want to follow this guidance or not. This is not a compulsory guidance. With the guidelines, we try to identify a hypothetical national forest monitoring system that has been based in successful stories and lessons learned. The guidance do not provide deeper information in technical issues. In most of the cases, there are additional available publications or reference that you can check and use if you want to be more deeper in, for example, statistical analysis or whatever issue that is referring in the guidance. There are some books in reference to this. The guidance provide advice in some important points to be considered. For example, if you are collecting data, you must have in place a repository infrastructure. This is something that some people don't think about, but the guidance tell you that this is something you have to keep in mind. For example, as well, if you want to set up a national forest monitoring system, you must have a clear mandate. That is another example of this guidance. Some of them seems to be simple and basic. However, do not take them in consideration can affect the well development and implementation of the national forest monitoring system. Each element, as in the example you can see in the slide, have a number for its identification. In this case, this is the 4.1. Then come with a short description of the element, and then come the guidance or good practices for each element. Again, the guidance are a good practice that were defined during the different expert consultation and based on FAO lessons learned. Use the guidance is easy and is a user-friendly. I think if you read this, you will get good knowledge and you get used to it easily. However, it can take time and will require a multidisciplinary team to evaluate them. As I mentioned to you, there are a lot of expert knowledge inside of them. To facilitate the application and evaluation of this voluntary guidance in each country, FAO has developed the National Forest Monitoring System Assessment Tool that I don't gonna go into in detail because it's the topic of the next presentation. But I just want to finalize my participation, telling you that the guidance are there and have been used by several countries already. Use them, they are user-friendly and free of charge. This is important to mention. We had compiled it to facilitate the work of member countries on a national forest monitoring system implementation, and we hope countries can use them. Thank you, all of you, for your attention. Now we move to the next presentation. Now is another presenter, not me. Anatoly, please take the floor.
Thanks a lot, David. And what I really like, I think, most about your presentation was how it's really nice for me to hear how the voluntary guidelines are a product of and also a good example of international participatory discussion process. I like to imagine all the people together in a room discussing over these, why it shouldn't be 10, why it's not 7, but actually 14, right? And as you mentioned, yes, our next presentation is from Anatoly Pultuhidu, who most of you will know from the course. She's a member of your support team for this course from Module 1 in particular. And Anatoly has been working for FAO for over 5 years, during which time she was mainly based in Bangladesh, supporting national forest monitoring there under the UN RED program. Recently, Anatoly has contributed to developing this tool, which is a tool for assessing a country's national forest monitoring system, which David has just mentioned and which she will now tell us more about. Anatoly, over to you. Anatoly, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself? I can unmute you. There you go.
Can you unmute me?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. And just a moment to... Just want to swap. So is everything okay now with the presentation?
That's perfect. Yeah, we see
All
your
right.
slides.
Okay, thanks. So thanks, Emily, and hello, everyone. Good day, good morning. Thank you very much for participating in our webinar today, and thanks for your engagement in this massive open online course on forest and transparency. We were following the discussions in the forums, and I think we have all learned a lot about the national forest monitoring systems of your own countries. So thanks for sharing the information with us and for your contribution. Today I'm going to show you how to quickly and easily assess the potential gaps, weaknesses and strengths that may exist in a country's national forest monitoring system using the National Forest Monitoring System Assessment Tool. So let me introduce you to the NFMS Assessment Tool. The tool was developed by FAO under the JEF-funded CBIT Forest project. It consists of an Excel file and is freely available on the internet. You can download it directly from Lesson 2 of the FAO e-learning course, or the FAO RED Plus website, or the website of the CBIT Forest project. The tool is accompanied by a guidance document that explains how to use it and describes the methodology that has been followed. So both the Excel file and the guidance are available in English, Spanish, and French. As David mentioned in his presentation, the tool is based on the voluntary guidelines on national forest monitoring in combination with resources and materials from the Red Compass of the Global Forest Observation Initiative, and incorporating the experiences and lessons learned by FAO member countries, projects, and initiatives. The tool was developed with the aim of helping countries in identifying the needs, gaps, and weaknesses that are associated with the design and implementation of the existing national forest monitoring system. It also allows users to track the progress made on the establishment and implementation of NFMS. It can provide guidance on the development of the NFMS implementation work plan, where areas of improvements can be identified and documented in collaboration with key stakeholders and partners. And we hope that by using the tool, it will help you to get a better understanding of the voluntary guidelines and successfully apply the guidelines in practice. The tool aims to help countries assessing the capacity and status of their NFMS. And this assessment takes place across 3 complementary themes, namely institutional arrangements, measurement and estimation, and reporting and verification. So in this slide, we see that institutional arrangements are essential for effective measuring, estimating, reporting, and verifying forest-related data and information. and therefore strong and robust institutional arrangements are on the basis of the MRV system. So how the assessment is conducted in this tool. So here we use a rating scale from 0 to 3, where users are able to select from a drop-down list and evaluate the guidelines listed in the tool based on country-specific information, experience, and knowledge. So for example, if a guideline is evaluated as 0, that shows that no action has been taken in a country to implement this guideline, and this activity deserves priority. If a guideline is evaluated as 1 or 2, it shows that there is awareness in a country to implement the guideline. However, further technical support is required. And finally, if a guideline is rated as 3, it shows that there is enough capacity in a country and there are no gaps or needs with regard to this specific guideline. So who are the potential users? The tool can be used by anyone who is involved in the national forest monitoring, and more specifically can be used by government bodies responsible for forest monitoring, educational and research institutions, the public and private sectors, and members of civil society and other relevant stakeholders and partners. At present, the tool has been tested in 7 pilot countries across Africa, Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean. And we are all very happy that we have here with us today representatives of Costa Rica for presenting and sharing with us the results obtained from their assessment. All countries that did this exercise and evaluated their NFMS followed a participatory approach to validate the results of their assessment involving key stakeholders and partners. And the main output of this task is the development of a roadmap of actions to address the gaps, the needs, and strengthen the NFMS. Finally, I would like to encourage all of you who are keen to learn more about the use of the tool to read the information note, which is available online. Download the tool, and why not using it to address the NFMS capacity of your own countries. I would also like to thank everyone who worked on the development of the tool and contributed with their feedback. And thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to receiving your questions in the QA box. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Anatoly. Great to hear that the tool is already being used. And please, participants, feel free to access the tool. As Anatoly mentioned, it's available online and from lesson 2 of the course, if you haven't already. And you can also use it to assess your country's national forest monitoring system, or even just to help frame your thinking about national forest monitoring systems in general, which is definitely what I use it for. We're also keen to receive feedback from users, so take a look and then let us know what you think. So relating to that now, I'd like to do another poll. Just 2 questions this time. It should appear on your screen now. Let us know if it doesn't. So it's based on the tool. We have these 4 areas that we can roughly group under a national forest monitoring system, and we would like you to rate these 4 areas in terms of which are the areas that are most critical, that the most challenging for your country, and then in the second question, it's on the other hand, which are the least critical, which do you think are kind of already sorted in your national forest monitoring system? So I see some of you have already started to vote. That's great. The 4 areas are institutional arrangements, measurement and estimation, reporting and verification. So if you think that one of the biggest challenge to your NFMS is preparing the reports, submitting them, this process, then please vote for this one. Analysis, or also you can respond that you don't know. And then it's the opposite for question 2. Which of those do you think are the least critical, the least challenging at the moment for your national forest monitoring system? Thanks a lot for those who have voted already. I see votes are coming in. Just give it a couple more, give it a minute or so more till everyone's voted. It looks already as though maybe reporting and verification is the most critical, but let's wait and see. Maybe I can do another countdown to prompt everyone. I hope this is visible okay in both French and English. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, great. With that is 3/4 of you have voted, so I will end polling there and share the results. Hopefully you can see them. Let me know if you can't. They should be on your screen right now. So yes, reporting and verification was voted by 1/3 almost of participants here as the most critical, the most challenging area of an NFMS of their country. So that's pretty interesting. But also, though, measurement and estimation is a close second, and institutional arrangements and analysis are on equally challenging, with both about 20% voting for them. So then on the other hand, which areas were the least critical? And that's quite interesting because 40% say that measurement and estimation is the least critical. So there's maybe a split between countries and those that this area is the least challenging and those that it is more challenging. And here we can also see that institutional arrangements are considered least critical by, again, 1/3, a little bit over 1/3 of participants. So I think that's pretty interesting. And if people want to discuss about that in the chat box, that would be great. So I think I'll stop sharing results now. I hope you've all been able to see them and absorb them. Okay, great, thank you. I think it's now time for our last presentation. We're going to hear from someone who has hands-on experience of setting up and operating a national forest monitoring system. We hear from Rafael Monge. Rafael is director of the National Center of Geoenvironmental Information, CENIGA, which is a technical unit of the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica. And this unit is aimed at promoting adequate management of national environmental information. And Rafael has been involved in developing and implementing Costa Rica's national forest monitoring system, which is known as CIMOCUTE. And I think most of the participants may be already familiar with it from a video that we had in the course that was from a webinar done a couple of months ago. So hopefully today we're going to hear even more about CIMOCUTE from Rafael. Great to have you here with us today again, Rafael, very early for you. Please, over to you.
Thank you, Emily. Let me see if I can show my screen. Desktop tool. Emily, can you confirm if you can see my screen good?
I can see your screen, yes. It's the script though, so I think maybe you want to share the presentation, right?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. Oh my God.
Echo, yeah, that's it there. Looks great.
Does it now?
Yeah, that's it, perfect.
See? Great, thank you. Thank you. Greetings and thank you for the invitation to participate in this webinar session of the massive online course on forests and transparency under the Paris Agreement. Hello to every person around the world that has joined us during this live streaming of this session, and also to those who will be watching the recording. Special compliments to my fellow panelists, to Emily, the moderator, and to all the people behind the organization of this activity. It's a pleasure to be sharing this time with you today. And I want to take the opportunity to tell you about how Costa Rica is leveraging our national forest monitoring system with the application of the NFMS Assessment Tool. My name is Rafael Monge, as Emily said, and I work at the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica. And here, I share with you my email address and Twitter handle if you wish to continue the conversation in any of those ways, in case we miss out some questions in this chat. But, well, I think, let me see if this works. I think you all know what part of the world I'm referring to when I say Costa Rica. Just in case, there is in the northern tropical hemisphere, connecting the American continent, the Pacific Ocean, and the Caribbean Sea. Costa Rica is an upper middle income country with a population of 5 million people, a land surface area of 5.4 million hectares, and a marine territory 11 times bigger. Costa Rica is a tropical rainforest. Costa Rica's tropical rainforest covers some 30% of the country's total surface area. Historically, the country has operated its national system of protected areas and its environmental services payment program, which together cover the 35% of the country and 70% of the forest. As a result, the forest sector is a net sinkhole of emissions, and currently the country presents a reforestation rate of 1% yearly. As forest is a very important asset for Costa Rica, this makes necessary and strategic for country's interest to build a robust and transparent national forest monitoring system. It has been achieved by a progressive and integrated work led by the Ministry of Environment and Energy, which today I'll briefly present to you based on the implementation of the NFMS Assessment Tool. During these last couple of months, inspired by the work done by FAO, we organized several working sessions and interviews for discussing, compiling, and responding to the different elements of this assessment. Here you can see the photo we took during a session we held on November 27th, in which we had the support and advice of colleagues from FAO. Thank you very much again for your support in this process. Well, in this slide, you can see the graphic summary of the results from the assessment. This is a screenshot taken from the tool itself that Anatoly explained just some minutes before. The values you can see here, well, 0 represents elements that have lack of actions or gaps that are necessary to prioritize. 1 or 2 are when there has been some actions implemented, and 3 is when is enough capacity in the country to implement the guideline. For the 89 elements you can see here in this evaluation, only 2 were marked as 0 for Costa Rica, 48 as 1 or 2, and 39 as 3. Now we'll be looking at the results for each component. First, for the institutional arrangements. This one is focused on the institutionalization, development capacities, and stakeholder integration, among other things. For that, I want to talk sheet. Let me see what this is not working. Thank you. Well, for this, in this component, our country has established the institutional arrangements to ensure the operation of our national forest monitoring system. The National Meteorological Institute is responsible for preparing the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory and the biannual update report, the BUR, including the RED Plus Annex. This institution is also in charge of the satellite land monitoring system, together with the RED Plus Secretariat of Costa Rica. And the National System of Conservation Areas is responsible for the National Forest Inventory. The country has an official platform for coordination and institutional and sectoral integration to facilitate the management and distribution of knowledge and information regarding land cover, land use, and ecosystems. We call this platform CIMOCUTE for its acronym in Spanish. This system has been constructed in response to the need for a more comprehensive and integrated monitoring strategy, which encompasses all lands and consists of several integrated subsystems that together produce consistent national scale information on the state and changes in all land uses, land covers, and ecosystems. The subsystems integrate field and remotely sensed data to provide comprehensive information across forest, agricultural, and other sectors that facilitate improved land use decision-making and provide data for a variety of national and international initiatives and reporting requirements. Costa Rica. initiated the design of Simocute in 2015 through a ministerial directive. The participatory construction of Simocute has included a wide variety of key stakeholders from public and private institutions, primarily from the agricultural and environmental sectors, as well as international agencies. The high level of coordination and integration among these stakeholders has been a key success of Simocute. The work of these institutions is coordinated through technical working groups, represented in the base of the image in this slide. We have also a consultative committee integrated by the coordinators of the work groups and the National Center of Environmental Information, who serves as, or CENIGA, as this the office where I work in, who serves as the coordination unit of Simocute. In the upper level of the structure, we have the steering committee integrated by representatives from the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the National Geographic Institute of Costa Rica. This committee has not yet been integrated because of the lack of an executive decree that formalizes Simocute and provides it with a higher level of institutionalization. We were hoping to have this covered by 2020, but we're pretty confident that in 2021 we'll be achieving this goal of formalization of this initiative of the system. And well, also in Simocute, we have had a very active capacity development agenda, thanks to the support of key partners like FAO or Silva Carbon. The global pandemic has slowed things down in this area. However, in this last semester, we started a new training program for the implementation of the sample-based area estimation methodology. Last week, we have an in-present session for this program. You can tell by the face masks what pictures correspond to this session. Based on the results of the assessment, we think that we can improve in this area by cooperating more with academic institutions, by supporting the development or adjustment of curricula, and also by promoting the integration of the student programs into Simocute. These are two things that the tool signals, and we know we discovered that these are elements that we should also include in our strategies. Well, now we will continue to the results of the assessment in the area of measurement and estimation. The main functions of Costa Rica's monitoring system include the calculation of activity data, estimation of emission factors, estimation of emissions, and report and verification. Costa Rica's forest monitoring system keep consistency with the proposed forest reference level and all REDD+ activities in the national strategy, and are monitored biannually, led by the Ministry of Environment. The country is systematically improving its measurements and estimation capacities. Here, I'm showing two of the last maps that we have produced based on different reporting needs and generated from different institutions, but that are complementary to each other. The land cover map made for the national greenhouse gas inventory, and also this the other map in the right for the types of forests made for the national forest inventory. In the near future, we'll have a new land cover map for 2017 and then a new one for 2019. And in the other case, we have started updating our national inventory, and we're hoping to have results for 2021, 2022. Also, Simocute is facilitating the access and management of this data by defining standards, methodologies, classifications, and procedures with the support of a technological infrastructure. We are working in the sound integration of the different levels of information that is incorporated into the system. This is easier to be said than done. And here you can find some of the samples of the strategies we have used to explain how things should work and why this is important. In the right, you can see an infographic prepared to explain the sample-based area estimation, how the sample-based area methodology works. And in this other infographic, we have conceptualized the technical and operational routes for the development of our monitoring system. We have completed a part of these elements, but some of them need more work in order to achieve the level where we want to be. I invite you to take a look at this image later and maybe practice your Spanish with it. And the last component is related to the reporting and verification, where we can find the elements of communications and dissemination and reports preparation and submission. Communication has been a very important area in the work of Simocute. Recently, we started a communications campaign representing in these images on the screen with the campaign. With this campaign, we want that more people to be informed about and understand the impact of the work that we're doing. People can find this information in our social media and social networks and in our website, simocute.go.cr. This is mainly directed to local stakeholders, but it will be recommended to produce this information also in other languages to reach other international audiences. And because we are also very active in disseminating information from our work internationally, as you are aware, we have been working very closely with FAO. That's why we are here today with you. And also we have been integrated with other several initiatives, like the example in this poster that we presented during the last climate dialogues organized by the IPCC, where we share our experience with, organized by the UNFCCC, where we share our experience through projects that combine the use of Earth observations and policy to put ecosystems in the heart of resilient development in Costa Rica. Well, you can read about everything I'm talking here in the official reports of Costa Rica available in the RED Plus web platform. In the technical annex of RED Plus for the biannual update report, the BUR, presented last year, you can find the latest analysis available of Costa Rica's forest dynamics and related emissions. However, this information still needs to be interpreted in order to reach a broader audiences and more people to understand and use this information. Nevertheless, all this work and knowledge have helped gain very important achievements, like the recent announcement that Costa Rica became the first Central American country to receive non-reimbursable funds from the Green Climate Fund due to its successful results in climate matters by reducing greenhouse gas emissions associated with deforestation in the 2014-2015 period. Finally, I would like to thank again to FAO for providing this tool, and I want to encourage other countries to use it and discover where you are and where you want to get with your national forest monitoring system based on the voluntary guidelines. Well, thank you very much for your attention. I'll be here to take any questions you may have.
Thanks so much, Rafael. That was really interesting to see the results from the tool, as well as the RED Plus results. Really great presentation, giving us an insight into what the future holds for Simocute. And I hope that's been food for thought for a lot of you who've been listening. I've seen in the chat that quite a lot of you also work in ministries of your countries, and for example, I hope the slide maybe with that showed the institutional arrangements really clearly was of interest for you all. Maybe you can start considering how Costa Rica's experience relates to your own country of origin or of interest. Okay, excellent. I think that's the end of our four presentations from our three speakers, giving us, first of all, a nice overview of national forest monitoring systems and national forest monitoring in general from David, then on the assessment tool from Anatoly, and finally from Rafael for showing us how it all applies in practice. Thank you all for engaging in the polls so far. And it's time now for the question and answer session. So please put your questions into the Q&A box. I don't think there's any been put in there so far, but please don't hesitate to write your questions to David, Anatoly, or Rafael, and we will get around to them. So just to get the ball rolling here, I will address my first question that I have to David, if that's okay. So David, what uptake have you seen of the voluntary guidelines in the 3 years since they've been published? They were published in 2017, right? So who's been using them, and what sort of results have they led to?
Thank you, Emily. It's a very nice question. And what I have to say is, you know, sometimes when there is a kind of product like this that we have, you know, like the voluntary guidance, it's a bit complicated to make assessment of the real impact that this have been done. You know, for example, 4 years ago when we published this, or when we bring this to COFO, there was a lot of discussion, you know, at that time, but was a national forest monitoring system. Now countries have, you know, a document, or have something where they can really defend, or they really have the definition, what is it, what it means, what they have. It's the first time that we have in somehow have this kind of definition, and the country can really have it on hand. What happened in the past, you know, when FAO had to provide support to different countries, normally they request us some support for data collection, you know, the national forest inventories, etc. And then after the support ended, everything collapsed, you know, because it was not a really setup of the system in place. And it happened as well with other donors. You know, a lot of countries request some donors support, and you know, after the end of the process, everything collapsed, and then the data was lost. And then now with the voluntary guidance, the country have a guidance in order to understand what means with the national forest monitoring system, to keep in mind how they have to follow, what is the different pieces they have to have. Then in case that there is a donor, or there is someone who comes to support them, they already know what to ask, what to have to be there to set up, and not just giving the you know, the donor or the consultant to come and do whatever they want, and they go and leave. I think this is important. Now there are several countries around the world that they start to, you know, use the guidance. Some of them already started with, as Costa Rica you mentioned, but there are others more, to work very hard with the institutionalization, to have a clear mandate in the country. You know, one of in the pool, one of the questions, the most important question was, you know, we need external support to carry out a national forest monitoring system, you know. But one of the major issues that we found is that you know, governments normally don't understand what is a national forest monitoring system. They don't see the advantage to have this. And then now with the monitoring guidance, they have a document, you know, the technical officers, they have a document that they can show what is it, what is the scope of how they can get with this. And you know, I hope in the next future, more countries will be join this initiative of the voluntary guidance, and they will, you know, in somehow as well harmonize the process of data collection and data sharing that we are really needed for all at a global scale. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, David. My next question is to Anatoly. Anatoly, it was clear from your presentation how the tool is a useful guide for countries to self-assess and to frame thinking about what gaps an NFMS might have. But I can also see how the tool and its output could be useful for transparency, and transparency in particular under the Enhanced Transparency Framework under the Paris Agreement. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Well, indeed, very interesting question. So the National Forest Monitoring System Assessment Tool allows countries to identify the potential needs, gaps, and weaknesses that countries face and are related to the design and the implementation of the NFMS. The establishment of a sustainable, robust, and of a national forest monitoring system, which is also multi-purpose, is a very long-term process and requires countries to learn by doing. Also, to support transparent reporting and decision-making under the Paris Agreement, countries need related institutional arrangement. This is fundamental together with a participatory approach that will support data collection, storage, management, and dissemination. So building a national forest monitoring system is a very complex process and national scale effort that must consider multiple institutional and technical and financial aspects. However, countries should continue their efforts in strengthening their NFMS that will be able to provide data that are transparent, accurate, consistent, complete, and comparable. Data that are essential for helping countries in meeting the reporting requirements under the Paris Agreement, compile a national greenhouse gas inventory, and so tracking the progress that have been made on achieving their climate change mitigation targets. So we hope that the NFMS tool will increase the ability of countries to monitor the capacity needed and track progress made on developing a robust and sustainable NFMS to meet the transparency goals under the Paris Agreement. Thanks.
Thanks, Anatoly, for that clear explanation. And I think it's something that we're going to talk about in tomorrow's webinar as well. So that's very interesting, and hopefully see all of you here tomorrow for tomorrow's webinar. Raphael, now a question for you. I think there's also, that's great to see that people are starting to put some questions in the Q&A box. Raphael, it's inspiring to see, as well as we saw in your presentation from the last time, from the webinar, how Costa Rica has reversed the trend of deforestation in the past 20 years. And you made it clear in your presentation how Simukute is used to monitor deforestation. And I was hoping that you could briefly talk to us about how it's maybe used to monitor other REDD+ activities such as degradation, which is something that's particularly difficult to monitor, and potentially also for monitoring forest restoration activities. Over to you, Raphael. I think you're muted. I can also unmute you.
Sorry, Emily, I lost your voice a little bit, but I...
sorry, I can repeat it. I was just interested in how Simukute might be used to monitor degradation and forest restoration besides deforestation.
Yes, of course. Thank you for the question. And this is an important, very important aspect for us right now, because we're trying to improve how we are or where we are with our reporting capacities, because we have found that the estimates that has been delivered need to be more accurate in order to make better decisions. And for that, actually, last year, well, this year actually, we have participated, we presented a project that was elected as one of the 32 projects that are being supported by the GEO and the Google Earth Engine program, where we're building capacities to generate new methodologies to detect deforestation, forest degradation, and forest restoration, to monitor and report CO2 emissions, and develop an early warning system that allows generating information in the shortest possible time on illegal activities related to deforestation. More than a dozen national and international organizations have joined this effort that is expected to deliver new knowledge on how to best use Earth observations to monitor forest dynamics in the tropics, using new tools like new bands, new sensors. We're trying to develop an approach using radar. And actually there's a whole bunch of opportunities and sources of information that we can use, because detecting deforestation or degradation in Costa Rica is hard, because it's scattered in the whole country and it's very reduced. Not only degradation, but also reforestation or regeneration. These are dynamics that are of interest, but are very, very hard to detect and provide statistics that are accurate. And this is a work that we're trying to improve on 2021. And also FAO is part of this initiative, and we have been being assessed by your colleagues and CPAL and other initiatives for delivering this project.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Raphael. Yeah, it's the fact that the forest regrows so fast, I think, in the tropics, right? That it makes it temporarily difficult to detect, and also it's also on such a fine scale. So that's exciting to hear that you're working on that in 2021, which is we're almost in 2021. So thanks.
Around the corner.
Yeah. There's also another question for you, Rafael, I think. I've seen it in the chat. Let me just take a look here. It's better for us if the questions are put in the Q&A box, just to let you know so we can find them more easily. The question comes from Bob. It's to Rafael. So having used the National Forest Monitoring System Assessment Tool in Costa Rica to assess where you're at and compare to where you want to be, what are the key gaps in the implementation of the NFMS, and how have you been able to mitigate or tackle these concerns?
Well, hi, Bob. Thank you very much for your question. Actually, we can be all day talking about the findings that we got from the assessment or using this tool. In all of the aspects, as I showed before, there are some strengths that we can highlight with the tool, but also the gaps, like for instance, issues related to institutionalization, how we need to a decree that further provides more support or sustainability to the process, and how to connect better with the academy in order to provide or disseminate this knowledge and have more actors involved in these processes. And other things, like one tiny thing that David has mentioned, that is a detail that has to be taken care of. Like, for instance, the example he provided on data, because we need to have a process where data can be systematically stored and available for the use of anybody who wants to check it out, validate it. And sometimes we just focus on the report and submitting the document to the organization that requires it. But all of those details that are part of this report and having this accessibility, it has to be taken care of. If you go to this annex, you go to the data is in a personal drive of a person that helped to build this information, and it should be in a server from the ministry, you know. And this is highlighted, signaling one of the elements of the assessment tool. And this is helping us to identify these small or big things that can improve our system in a very big way. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rafa. I think there's another question I have seen in the Q&A box. If it's okay, I will give it to to David Morales. It's from Lisa. She would like to know if every country that has done a national forest inventory has obligatorily or mandatorily a national forest monitoring system. So what do you think, David?
Thank you, Lisa, for this important question. You know, well, if you follow all the modules that we have online, you will see that National Forest Monitoring System is a more comprehensive concept. You know, in the long time ago, in the past, we always try to promote national forest inventories, like the one of the major sources of data. Then when the remote sensing came, people start to talk about, you know, remote sensing, and then they start to be a kind of competency, you know, people dealing with remote sensing, people dealing with data collection in the field, and then, you know, start to talk about socioeconomic issues and et cetera, et cetera. If you see the definition of what we promote in the National Forest Monitoring System, is a really comprehensive thing. There is a framework for all the data management that you have. There are different sources: ancillary information, remote sensing, socioeconomic, field data, etc. There is, you know, existing information. For example, if you have a census, agricultural census in your country, or you have some economics, etc., or other data, you can have all this in a comprehensive way. Then, if you have a national forest inventory, it's great, it's one of the pillars, it's one of the components, but you need to move forward in order to have this comprehensive monitoring, national forest monitoring system. This is why, you know, with the guidance, you will be able to follow this process in order to have all this very well complex system. I hope this clarifies.
Yeah, thanks a lot, David. There's actually another question for you, if it's okay. It's again from Bob, so thanks, Bob. It says, to David Morales, the voluntary guidelines on national forest monitoring are very important in facilitating the implementation of the national forest monitoring system. Is it possible to develop a simplified version of the guidelines detailing clear indicators that countries can use to assess adherence to these guidelines? Much as these are voluntary, we believe they can be included into national laws. Are there any examples of countries that have attempted to do this?
Very nice. Look, a simplified version. Well, this is complicated. We try to summarize as much as we can. Of course, there are, even with the new technologies coming, new developments, probably more and more, in the future will come more guidance for other things, and then making more simplified will be complicated. But what we are suggesting the countries is you don't have to have 100% of the guidance. This is not what we are aiming. You can start with some of them, move forward, and then step by step trying to get the others that you have, because they will give you the strengths of the system. As soon you complete this hypothetical system that we designed with all the support of all experts around the world, you will be able to have more consolidated and more transparent and more valuable system in place. Then this is why we cannot really say that we can have a simplified version. This is not like this, but you can start step by step. That is the recommendation. About the legal issues, yes, there are countries that already started. Now we have examples. Well, Costa Rica, that we have here, Rafael. They started like 2 or 3 years ago with the formulation of a decree in order to have officially the Simocuti or the system in place, because previously they only have an office in the Ministry of Environment that were in charge of the National Forest inventory of data collection. But now they have a decree, and there are other countries that we can go through the names, but yes, there are some of them. Some of the guidelines are more technical issues, are more like Rafael mentioned about the how to share the data. Well, can be something that is by law, but something as well by some official decree that the government already agree that they can have free available the data or something like that. It's just up to the country which kind of guidance to follow, which kind of guidance to take in place. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, David. I think we're almost at the end of the webinar, although I see there is one more question from Pervis. I see Anatoly is typing an answer. Let me just, in brief, it's been answered. Okay, I can read out Anatoly's answer. Perfect. Thank you, Anatoly. So in response to Pervis's question, when countries construct, so I'll read out the question as well, so in case people haven't seen it. While going through all the modules in the webinar, I don't see much difference on reporting on REDD+, including forest reference mission level / forest reference level, and the technical annex on REDD+ as part of the biannual update report or the biannual transparency report. And Anatoly responds, hi Pervis, thanks for your question. When countries construct FREL/FRL for REDD+, they set a baseline of historical emissions / removals from the forest sector, while in the technical annex on REDD+, they report the emissions from the climate change mitigation targets. That's, yeah, exactly. So in the technical annex, you report on your results, whereas the FREL is something that you submit in parallel that shows you what the baseline is. I hope that's clear enough, Pervis. And if you're interested in these topics, I just want to say that tomorrow we will have with us expert from the UNFCCC. So all of your questions about REDD+ and reporting, they will love to hear them. So hopefully you will join us also tomorrow. And I think, have we covered all the questions? I think so. So that's perfectly on time, I think. I just want to say, first of all, thank you to all of the presenters today, Rafael, Anatoly, and David. Thanks so much. And especially big thank you to everyone that's participated today. I think we managed to pack a lot into the past half hour and a half. And I hope it's been useful to help think about and help cement a little bit the stuff that you've been learning over the past 2 weeks of this online course. And thanks for your engagement in the Q&A box. That was really, I enjoyed that question and answer session there towards the end. And so thanks for the engagement in general, and thanks to my colleagues for supporting during this webinar. Just to summarize, I would like to say that today's webinar was about national forest monitoring systems on paper and in practice. We heard from first from David, who was telling us how national forest monitoring systems are useful because they generate information from multiple needs relating to forests, which include information about extractable timber, biodiversity, maybe medicinal uses that people make of the forest, any socioeconomic uses of forests. It's important for international reporting, perhaps on REDD+, on biodiversity, to the Convention on Biological Diversity, or to the Global Forest Resources Assessment. We know that an NFMS is fundamental for forest monitoring in a country, and we have guidance, the voluntary guidelines on national forest monitoring, which were developed through negotiation and consensus between many stakeholders from around the world, which was arrived at over a number of years, which David kindly told us about. And a handy derivative of the voluntary guidelines has been the National Forest Monitoring Tool, most recently, which Anatoly presented, and shows how it enables a quick and easy assessment of a national forest monitoring system using material from both the voluntary guidelines and the REDD+ guidance. And then finally, Rafael showed us how the tool was applied in Costa Rica, gave us a tour of Costa Rica's national forest monitoring system, very own Simocute, highlighting the successes as well as the challenges and the next steps, which was hopefully food for thought for everyone listening whenever thinking about the NFMS of your own country or an NFMS of interest to you. Interestingly, I think Simocute as well is multi-purpose. It's not only forest, it goes beyond forest. It's provides information over all land cover in Costa Rica, and it's used for estimating emissions and removals from forests, agriculture, and other land uses for climate action. So thanks and goodbye.